CITV. And now, here's your host, Haiden Haley.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Colonials football pregame show. I got little bro Davin in front of me and my friend Reed Stern to my right. As always, I'm Haiden Haley here to host you guys. Colonials got everyone who is a Colonials fan their weekend off to a great start, but it ended very poorly with a disturbing Eagles loss. The first time I'm saying that all season. Eagles loss on Sunday afternoon in the Meadowlands, and Reed, that was no miracle at the Meadowlands by any means.
Yeah, no, that was a joke game. The fact that, the Eagles were so favored to win over the Jets, the fact that they had a lead at halftime, the fact that they literally scored nothing in the second half, the fact that Jalen Hurts, even at the end of the game, he has a chance to at least, do right. What is it, a minute 45 left? And
plenty of time for a great football
Plenty
team.
of time for a great drive for the Eagles. And what does he do? He throws a horrible pass to Devontae Smith for 2 yards. And then he throws a horrible pass into double coverage, and it's literally an incomplete pass. But just like Jalen Hurts is just, I don't know what happens, but you give him the roster that he needs. You give him the team. You put a good team around him, good receivers, good line, and what happens? He doesn't play well. And this is the problem I think with Hurts. And getting back to Super Bowls, you can't expect to get back to a Super Bowl. If you don't play like the Eagles last year. I mean, the Eagles last year were much better than how they are now.
So a couple points on that. Offensive line's a big one, and they really didn't have a true offensive line on Sunday because Lane Johnson only played, 5/8 of that first quarter, and it is there are multiple stats of him when he's out, how poorly the Eagles perform without Lane Johnson. So I think part of it was that. Something else, you talking about Jalen Hurts, I thought John Ritchie from IP made an excellent point, which is how this offseason they kind of push Jalen not to be Jalen. They don't want him running as much, and for good reason. You don't want him to get hurt. But they almost haven't been putting as much on his shoulders with all these weapons. And they put a lot on his shoulders last year. He was competing for a contract, his job pretty much. Now he's got this big 5-year deal, and he's not the type of person to see that money and run away, pull a Ben Simmons. But it's almost like that was a safety blanket for him. Last year he went out and did everything he could, not just to win, but really to prove himself. He's a second-round quarterback. He lost his job at Alabama practically, then transferred to Oklahoma and lost in the playoffs horribly to Joe Burrow and the Bengals. So he's always been a fighter, but it's almost like I'm not seeing that this year.
Yeah, I'm not seeing either. And listen, I don't want to go over, history here, but if I had to say something, look at Wentz. I know Wentz got injured, but Wentz got paid all that money. He got a nice deal, and, he didn't turn out well. I'm not comparing Hurts to Wentz. I don't want people to watch the show and be like, oh, well, you're saying Hurts is as bad as Wentz. I'm not saying that. I think Hurts is much better than Carson Wentz. I think he's playing much better than Carson Wentz. But I think that, like you said, he had everything going for him last year. He realizes he needed to play his ass off to get the money he felt he deserved. But I feel like you can't just get the money and then just say, okay, now that I have the money, well, I don't care anymore. You have to play like you mean it. You have to be smart. It's not like in college where you don't have to be the smartest quarterback necessarily to win. If you have a really good team, if you're an Alabama team or Georgia team with a stacked roster, you put a good quarterback there. You don't need a top quarterback. But in the NFL, you're talking about smart defenses, smart offenses. You have to be really, really smart in the NFL, and you just can't be making stupid decisions. You can't be making stupid plays. And Jalen Hurts should know that more of all. He's experienced. He got us to Super Bowl last year. And I think maybe, if anything, this Jets loss will make him realize that he needs to relook at this entire, season so far, relook at how his team's playing, and ask himself, is this how the Eagles should be playing? Is this what Philly deserves? Is this as good as we are? Because on paper, we're better than this.
I agree with that, but at the same time, this team isn't as good as last year's team. They lost a lot of people. They have a lot of rookies coming in that were supposed to fill these, big shoes, so to speak. So I think people knew that we weren't going to be 14-3 this year, and I think that loss is going to be constructive. Like, I think it was just a bad game. It was a bad game. I know New York has a big sports market, so I guess maybe the fans had something to do with that, but kind of doubtful. The Jets are better than – this is probably one of the best Jets teams you can find over the past 30, 40 years, something like crazy like that. And if they had Aaron Rodgers, I think it may have been more of a fight, I think like the Eagles would have known like they got to come prepared. But when you see, stupid Zach Wilson on the other side, it's not very intimidating. They also had some notable injuries. No Fletcher Cox, no Jalen Carter, no Darius Slay. The Jets had no Sauce Gardner. They had practically no secondary. So, I mean, injuries on both sides. I really like when I was walking upstairs to my room after that game on Sunday, I was like, that was just a bad game on both sides of the ball. 20-14 final score, right? That was just a bad game on both sides of the ball, really.
Now, I would like to see where this loss is going to take the Eagles. I mean, when the Phillies lost that upsetting game against the Braves, game 2, Nick Castellanos in an interview says, we thrive off of getting punched in the face. And they clearly got back up and they beat the Braves, harsh the next 2 games. And I'd like to see if the Eagles could do the same thing, if they could get back
absolutely.
from that loss and get up, or if they're going to take this as a real beating and, kind of they're going to take a little bit longer to recover. And I think that the Eagles are a team that can get back up from that easily.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we just need to see where all the, coaches are going to be with that. I mean, Nick Sirianni, he always wants to win. So he's probably going to be as encouraging as possible, just trying to get the team on the same page.
But there are no more undefeated teams left in the NFL. Like, I think there were a bunch of bad games that went on this past Sunday. What was it, the weekend of October 13th, getting to everyone? But, like, there were 2 NFL teams that were undefeated going into this past Sunday. That was the Niners and the Eagles. The Niners lost to the Browns in Cleveland.
Was probably just as upsetting.
That was so weird.
Yeah.
I was looking at that game, and I think the Niners were, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't they leading going to, like, the second quarter, first quarter?
Yeah.
They were leading for just about the entire game. I mean, right now, if the playoffs started today, this is how crazy the NFL is right now, because the season never shakes out how you expect it to. The Lions would be the 1 seed. The Lions. The Eagles would be 3 because they lost last. They'd be 3. You'd be hosting, like, I don't know, some weird wild card team, like stupid Tampa Bay in Philadelphia for the opening, week of the playoffs if they started today. But, I hope we could chalk it up to a bad week. And Davin, you kind of referencing the Phillies there. I'd like to talk about that as we witnessed game 1 of the NLCS taking place between the Diamondbacks and the Philadelphia Phillies. Phillies will host the first 2. Diamondbacks will host the next 3. Well, at least the next 2, if 3 if necessary, and then come back for 6 and 7 again if necessary, and at the bank. So, crowds into it, players are into it, staff's into it. I know it was probably a pain if you work in South Philly to kind of navigate traffic on Friday morning because everyone was trying to get their hands on one of them sweet NLCS shirts, which I don't really understand why people want to buy those so bad because, like, we made it to the CS last year, and, like, if you don't win the CS, then it's kind of like a pointless T-shirt. Anyway, they're in. They lead 1-0. They play a few more games this week. Reed, I know you always like to talk Phillies. You were really ecstatic last time I had you on the show about them. So what do you got to say about our Fightins?
I think our Fightins are something special.
They're certainly fighting.
And
certainly fighting.
Exactly. And I'll tell you this, Haiden. Last year they were special. And I feel like last year, especially nobody thought last year, the Phillies were going to do it. But this team's different. This team has more experience, and I'll tell you what this team is. They're better than last year. They have more depth. They're a better team. I 1,000% believe. I think Bryce Harper's playing the best baseball of his life.
The 31-year-old Bryce Harper just had his birthday on Monday.
Yeah, he's playing phenomenal. Castellanos is stepping up big.
Yes, he was horrible in last year's World Series, but really has turned it around.
Last year he was just known, just a base hit guy. Just be lucky to get a single out of him or double out of him. But he's doing really well. And so I look at this Phillies roster and I say this, and this is saying the pitching does well. You have Nola, you have Alvarado, you have hopefully, relievers. I don't like Kimbrel. I will say I think he needs to work. He's old. He's out of his prime. But, I really like this Phillies roster, and I really think that they stack up nice against any of those teams, whether it's the Rangers or the Astros that they meet up in the World Series. And I don't want to discount the fact, and I know the Phillies play tonight, but I don't want to discount the fact that the Diamondbacks, they're a really good team. They went the same way the Phillies did last year, and they have a stacked team. They can hit really well. They know how to get a lot of runs. And I really respect that team. And it's not an easy series for the Phillies, but I think the Phillies are better than the Diamondbacks. So.
No, I completely agree because something interesting that I just kind of picked up on, people are saying how this season's so similar to last season, and it really is. How like the Phillies are now the 4 seed. Obviously you said they're better than last year. They clearly are, but you got another 6 seed in the CS games, the conference championship. So who's not to say that the Diamondbacks would come in and upset everyone, kind of like the Phillies did last year? I think that's just something that's got to be lingering. I'd say the only difference is Phillies last year, the 6 seed Phillies, won all game ones, and the Diamondbacks did not win in the very tough, rugged Philly environment last night. So going up 2-0 to the Diamondbacks, where they obviously play very well in Arizona, and the Phillies do not play well in Arizona at all. That's going to be huge because now you can win in 7 games. You know what I mean? You don't need to win in Arizona when you won all at home, right? You could risk a few losses.
Now, I would like to bring up probably the most important stat. Philadelphia has probably, at least I think, the best crowd in baseball, especially during the postseason. And we could see 3 big home runs happen last night. It was Schwarber off the first pitch.
Yes, 2 off first pitches.
Harper off the first pitch, and then Castellanos also had that one. As soon as I saw that one going in the air, I knew that was a home run. And Fox 29 Philadelphia thankfully gave us some great statistics here, saying that Nick Castellanos' home run, the crowd clocked in at 103 decibels.
Is that higher than the Harper World Series?
I don't.
No, the Harper World Series came up on a seismograph.
It did, yeah. And Bryce Harper's home run came up at 111 decibels last night.
I thought the Schwarber was the loudest watching
it
that.
Could have been. I can't find a recording of it.
So it may not have been very loud then.
Yeah, but very loud crowd. Everybody loves that crowd. It's
So Davin, I have a question for you about, because I know you're big on the stats and stuff. In terms of this, we know that like the Philly fans are very passionate. There's a lot of them, in terms of when you look at other MLB teams, like the Phillies, like win in terms of the battle, they have a lot of fans, especially somebody who's like looking at like ticket prices. Do you think there's a reason as to why Philly tickets, like they're like $250 for like an NLCS game, and in Arizona they're like $30 a ticket? I mean, I'm just curious as to the.
Well, first off, Kyle Schwarber's home run was at 108 decibels.
Okay.
And as the the final out hit, it was 106 decibels for the win. But yeah, I mean, the ticket prices ever since the wild card game were the most expensive in the MLB, and they still probably are the most expensive as of
what's
now.
interesting about that is I don't really think there's any rhyme or reason, Reed. It's just like Philly is a baseball town. It always has been. It's been a baseball town since 1883. It's a city that is very rich in all sports. But like, it just has a bunch of fans, and I think they're all for aftermarket price value. So, the Arizona isn't really crowding up that much for these games. But I know for a fact that making not going far in the playoffs. I mean, obviously you want to go far, but not just going far, but to just make it to the playoffs is something that the Phillies and the fans, like the city, has been looking forward to ever since last year for 10 years, right? 10, about there. I mean, the World Series, I haven't made it, and it was 2008, so that was even more to make it to a World Series game, yet alone just the playoffs. But people were lined up, and people were lined up ready to go see the games, but people also lined up ready to make some money. They were like, all right, I'm a season ticket holder. I'm paying $70 for every ticket I get. Why not I sell this one for $700?
Well, I mean, you could even see, Hayden, you and I...
And people are willing to pay the price. Sorry to cut you off there,
Yeah.
Davin. But it's not that. It's not like, I'm some season ticket holder for the Diamondbacks. I pay $70 for each ticket. Let me see if I could sell it for $700. No one buys it. Oh, I don't want to go to the game. Now I got to sell it for $30. I mean, it's like these aftermarket economics that, I know a few people that season ticket hold for, Eagles, Sixers, what have you. And that's the game you have to play in order to, make a sale if you can't go to a game. That's just kind of what comes with it. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. And if you're a season ticket holder for the Phillies and you don't go to a game, you're going to win a lot. You're going to win a lot.
Yeah, but like I was saying, so yeah, Hayden, you and I, we went to Citizens Bank Park the other day trying to pick up a few jerseys.
Yes.
And I mean, we saw everything was just completely sold out, or they had like extra larges that nobody was going to pick up. I even remember overhearing a man say, even Rojas is sold out.
Yeah, even Rojas.
You're trying to find anything at this point that you're even going to buy. I mean, if Rojas is your favorite player, respect to you. He's a great guy. But everybody's looking for the Harper jerseys. Everybody's looking for the Schwarber jerseys. And you're just going to pick up anything that you could get. I mean, even, Stott hit that grand slam. The next few days, I couldn't even find a Stott jersey on sale. They
released it again. Immediately after the Grand Slam, they released it online, but I guess not in store.
But I even remember, last year, just talking about how authentic the fans are. Last year when the Eagles made the Super Bowl, lines out the door at Dick's Sporting Goods for people wanting the Super Bowl shirts, the Super Bowl sweatshirts, the jerseys, whatever. And we didn't even win. Like, we just made it into the Super Bowl.
So that's the thing. Our fan base is that deep. It's like, we only have a few amount of, like, we're going to take the small wins, but they feel so big. And I think that's what really fuels the players, I think that's got to mean something that, like, we're here for the whole ride, whether you win or lose. Like, we just know you tried your best. And that's what Bryce Harper, says in just about every post-game interview he's in. I mean, it seems like that's what the players look like when I see him on, YouTube and Instagram and stuff like that. Like, it just seems like they like each other, and everyone kind of involved with the Phillies, I think, feels the same way.
Yeah, I mean, Haiden, like you said, I forget which one of the players said this. It might have been Castellanos or Harper, but they said, like, this is a brotherhood, and like, if you're against, like coming in here and working hard and represent everything Philly means, it's like that. We don't want you. We don't want you. We want the best. We want the players who come here day in, day out, put it all in, with the goal of winning the championship. So, yeah.
So as we know, the Phillies will continue to play throughout this week. But let's go back to Friday, where the Colonials played at Springfield, their close division rival, and won at a score of 35-0. Had a chance to catch up with the defensive lineman, Tayshawn Johnson, about the game from Friday. So let's listen in on that audio now.
How are you guys going to prepare for WISSAHICKON on Friday?
We're probably going to take into consideration the QB. He's a dual threat QB. He can throw it and he can run. So we're probably going to contain him on the defensive side. I feel like we're watching film on him today. We're going to probably look at the formations and what we normally do and prepare for them like we prepare for every team. And they're going to be easy.
All right, this past Friday, this is the second shutout of your season. How are you guys going to keep the momentum forward throughout the next two games?
Well, we're going to keep it forward by giving it our all every game, not letting up, and just punching them down their throats every game.
And, with the last two games of the regular season coming up, what do you guys hope to accomplish and get ready for the offseason?
Well, with only two games left, we're hoping to win we're going to win our league. We're hoping to get to win our District 1 and probably hopefully win states. Go as far as we can and have as long as a season as we can.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Always nice to talk with Tayshawn. Has a lot to say about the games, as we know, and nice to get that little point of view from on the field. Now, Davin, I know you liked what he said after that second question. Got anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, ever since that 21-0 loss that we had a few weeks ago, the Colonials we've seen them being absolutely ruthless on the field. Everywhere they go, they tackle hard, they run hard, and it goes to show from the perspective of someone who leads the team in sacks and is one of the leaders in the league in sacks. They won it every single game.
Absolutely.
And they get it every single game.
So kind of like, unlike last year's team, it seems like they just keep getting better. I mean, I remember when I was a sophomore and, watching this team, and I thought, well, this team is really good. And it was like, we're going to lose some seniors, so I don't think they'll be as good next year. And it was like, wow, this team's pretty good. Well, we're going to lose some seniors, quarterback, half a line, half a secondary. Like, how are we going to be? We're probably not going to be that good next year. And we start out 2-0, and then we lost that game to Quakertown, like you said. And the biggest change they've made is making Caden the quarterback. And what I was kind of thinking of, like, how he's not, like, the same play style as Aiden O'Brien or Anthony Iannozzi, he's been fitting in beautifully with this new offense. I mean, Coach Chang pulled out this, playbook that seems like it was ancient and said, well, we're either going to win a few more games after this loss because, 2-1, like you're kind of still in it, or we're either going to lose a lot more games or we're going to win a lot more games with this. And they've just been winning. I mean, Caden's making the right plays. He's able to run it a little bit himself, but I'm liking all the passing that they're able to do. And, when in doubt, just hand it to Everett Baker and Nazai Boggs, and they're going to get you, a couple yards and a couple touchdowns. I think something else that I was kind of thinking about watching these past few games is how Caden Lazinski, he kind of reminds me of Carson Wentz, but like MVP Carson Wentz, like not this like new look Carson Wentz. It's like how, big guy can make a great throw, but also, could use his size and agility to run the ball himself a little bit. So I think if he can, look like 2018 Carson Wentz, I think we're going to be fine, making it deep into the playoffs, which is clearly what Tayshaun wants.
Yeah, I mean, we say this every week. We say it in the booth, but Caden is just such a game changer, and in a good way. I mean, he brings out the best in all of these guys when he's commanding the ball, and it's great because it shows the true potential of him, as a quarterback. It also shows the potential of everybody else on that field who can get the ball. It shows our receivers, running backs, the tight ends. It doesn't matter. Yeah, everybody's able to really show their full potential, and I mean, he's great, when there's all the good blocking going on, and when someone eventually breaks through, puts pressure on him, he can run that ball extraordinarily well, or he can, nice little lateral pass to Nazai, nice little, maybe downfield to anybody. It's really anybody, and it turns out to a great play no matter what.
Well, speaking about those plays, it seemed like Friday Everett Baker was getting a lot of the action, besides the fact that Nazai had 3 touchdowns, only had 50 yards. Davin, what can you tell us a little bit more about those stats and the team's kind of approach on Friday night?
Yeah, so Everett Baker had 106 yards.
That's a season high for him.
Yeah,
a game high.
It's huge for someone like him because he's a great player. I've at least seen some games. He doesn't get used as much as some other players, and I mean,
well, because you kind of want Nazai around the goal zone. Luke and Nazai, you want them kind of in the red zone.
He knows how to run it in.
Absolutely,
well.
Yeah. He's gonna get with his downhill speed. He's gonna pick up some yards. But the problem is, kind of going to the past few games is, well, when Nazai's having 70, 80-yard runs, well, you don't really need Everett Baker to kind of pick up for you there if he's just going to run it into the end zone.
Yeah.
So he's been hot, but you'd expect him to not have, not have as big of a game. He can't have all big games. But Nazai, what really impressed me the most is he had 3 touchdowns on 50 yards. Talk about efficiency.
Yeah. Rest of the stats, I mean, Plymouth White Marsh was dominant in just about everything. I mean, 51 total plays, and Springfield only had 43. Plymouth White Marsh was able to achieve 22 first downs. So we were certainly taking it downfield nicely.
Possessing the ball is something that I've really appreciated them doing this year.
I mean, it definitely, from the 35-0 win, it shows that, scoring wasn't necessarily the first thing on our mind the whole time. We just wanted it to get the first downs, keep going downfield.
Absolutely.
And Springfield only had 6 first downs, as a matter of fact. Guess we got them punting a lot. 7 penalties for Plymouth White Marsh and 9 for Springfield. Could have been a physical game there. And I feel like penalties against Plymouth White Marsh, we've seen a lot from these teams.
Yeah, what was the penalty count on both sides?
9 for Springfield, 7 for Plymouth White Marsh.
Well, and there you go. So Springfield, a pretty good when they're at home. I mean, we knew the Colonials were going to score 35 points, but it was just, we thought the Spartans would maybe score a couple more than, well, a goose egg. And so I think it's probably that penalties that set both teams back from probably getting a few more touchdowns.
Well, it says here, Springfield was total penalty yards was 73.
Oh my god, that's
and
almost
Plymouth White Marsh only had 55.
3/4 of a football field.
Which, I mean, 55. That is half.
Yeah, that
so
probably
it's
sent
not,
you into some big third downs.
Well, and then you get the first downs. I mean, that shows again. That shows Caden's passing, running, whatever ability. Like that shows the kind of guy
the field's
he is.
Never really too big.
Yeah,
that's a big weapon.
Some yardage stats. This is crazy to look at. I mean, I was stunned. Springfield had 135 total yards. 132 of their yards were passing, and 3 of those yards were rushing.
Springfield only had 3 rushing yards.
Springfield only had 3 rushing yards.
So
now,
we knew they were going to be more pass dominant, but I get that Colonials front is no joke. They didn't really want it. Yeah, right.
And now looking over at Plymouth Whitemarsh, this is where my jaw dropped. 340 total yards. That's normal for
that's light work
points.
compared to having 500 against William Tennant.
Guess how many of those yards were rushing?
It's got to be, 100, 160?
284. 56 passing yards, 284 rushing yards.
Wow.
I mean, I guess, split that up between, you got Everett getting 106, and then you have, Luke Winterbottom over here with 70, I mean, Nazai was
so
50.
well-rounded, yeah.
Yeah.
Was that 50 rushing yards, or is that 50 combined yards for Nazai?
Probably
all rushing.
I assume most if not all of them were rushing.
He probably didn't get any passing yards.
Yeah. I mean, that is just unbelievable for a team to do that.
That run game's no joke for the
really
football
isn't.
team.
I mean, I don't know.
Past years, they weren't really able to get it going because they really had to focus on the triple option and utilize Aiden O'Brien.
They really
for those
found
sneaks.
something, though.
Yeah,
but found something.
You still technically have the triple option in the sense that you have 3 excellent running backs and someone who could really pull some trickery off in that backfield in Caden Lazinski. So now, Reed, I got a question for you as someone who's been watching football, Colonials football, probably just as long as I have. I gotta know, I know we've had like similar opinions on how each team's going to vary from year to year, and past few years been absolutely wrong. What do you think the biggest difference maker for this year's team is in possibly making a deeper run in the playoffs?
I mean, honestly, Haiden, I think the difference maker is it's the motivation. Yeah. You get to that third round, right? 2 years back to back, and you don't win. And I think at a certain point, you look at a lot of this team, especially with, well, you said Tayshawn, right? Nazai. You look especially for the seniors. This is their last ride. They know this.
Guys, yeah.
These 4-year guys invested their time, and they're saying, "Well, we got nothing to lose, all to gain." And like even the Tayshawn interview, he said, we're just gonna try to get as far as we can get. Let's not. This is what I told Tayshawn. I'd say, do not worry about the championship. Do not worry about the championship. Worry about winning each game you can win. And if you get to the championship, get to the championship. But take each game at a time and try to get as far as you can get.
Yeah, I like that mindset, Reed. I think that was really well said. Something else notable is if they win out, only 2 more games left in the regular season. I'm not really sure how this shook out, but there's only going to be 9 weeks of high school football instead of 10 like in years prior. But speaking about years prior, is Colonials would start out like 0-2. They got that first loss 2 weeks in and have not looked back from that. So if they win out, they'll be 9-1, and it's a very competitive 5A conference this year. I think West Chester's 1, Strathaven's like 2, and right now we're at 7. But if we win out and all those other teams, above us still have 2 losses, we're going to be 4-5, get a nice playoff home field advantage for the first couple of rounds. I think that would be really sweet as this team really flourishes at home.
I would like to say just, with some quick math and most definitely not with a calculator, I learned that 83.5% of the Colonials, the yards.
Total yards from last week was
rushing.
83%
83%.
That sounds about right. And, Coach Chang's really he loves that run game. I think last year it got us into some trouble deeper in the playoffs. But when you have as strong of a passing game as that, if, a team like Springfield has horrible rushing defense, exploit that. You just want to get out there with the win, like Reed said. Just worry about one game at a time. If you're going to win, 7-0, 35-0, 35-34, whatever it's going to be, as long as you get that win, that's really what matters. Especially like we've been saying with 2 games left. You want that 8-1 or 9-1. Yeah, 8-1. You want that 8-1.
I think what's great about the Colonials this season is that we have games where it could be 50-50.
Right.
There could be a little more passing, and we really Colonials just feel that out in the first few snaps. Honestly,
yes,
they see what they like, and if it changes, they read the other team like a book. They know when to change everything defensively and offensively.
Yeah, they have a really good coaching staff, whether it's the line, the secondary, the receivers, or just the head coaching with Coach Chang able to pull everything together each week, with film and the lifts and all the plays they need to do to tailor make a playbook, select the plays they want to use against these teams. And speaking about the teams, they're going to be facing probably their toughest opponent of the season in WISSAHICKON this week. So I'm curious, Davin, if you could read us off, kind of tell us a little bit about WISSAHICKON.
Yeah, here.
WISSAHICKON's been looking like the best team that they've been in most recent years, because they usually are not a very good football team. I think did they lose to Springfield by 1 or beat them by 1?
I do remember,
because last year we beat, to put this into perspective, we beat both teams 46-0, Springfield and Wissahickon.
All right, looking back all the way to August 25th, they beat Council Rock North in what looks like a quite high-scoring game, 48-28. Then they go on to beat Hatboro 41-40.
Yeah, so Hatboro has been looking good. They're now a 6A opponent. I know a few shows back I said how bad they were, but that's probably how they're going to make the playoffs. Wissahickon is by beating these 6A guys.
Yeah, they beat Lower Marion 35-18, so they already started off 3-0.
Right.
That looks like a great start for this kind of team.
We only start out 2-1.
Yeah.
So
then they beat Simon Gratz 44-28.
Okay.
They lose to Upper Dublin 53-42.
Yeah, a high-scoring game.
We're gonna see
a huge game. Even though it was a loss, there were probably a lot of wins to come from that game.
Wissahickon, Tayshawn, we heard him say that they got a dual threat quarterback. They certainly look like, in Wissahickon, just from these scores alone, they look like an offensive team mainly. And if they lose by high scores. Right. So we're going to have to see what goes on there. They lost to Springfield 29-28. Springfield we just played this past Friday.
Mm-hmm.
They beat Upper Moreland 28-20.
Right.
And they beat William Tennant 35-14. And that brings us to this upcoming week. Wissahickon has also been 3-1, both home and away. So no matter where they are, they seem to be relatively consistent.
Okay. Well, so they'll be home this week against the Colonials, and you're hoping that they could kind of exploit those weaknesses, like you said. Was it running, or they're more of a pass-based team? You said.
Tayshawn told me dual threat.
That's right, dual threat.
Yeah, and I mean, like I just said,
right.
High scoring, and if they're going to lose, they're going to lose by a team just outscoring them.
Right,
so
right.
We're not really sure
more offensive.
Defensively, how defensive based this team is.
Yeah. So you think you're hoping a lot of back and forth. I'm kind of thinking that's maybe what that upper Dublin game was like, as they only lost by, was it like 9 points, right? 50-41 or something like that
against
Upper Dublin, right? Was it Upper Dublin?
They lost. They won by 8 to Upper Moreland. Hold on, let me find Upper Dublin. 53-42.
Yeah, 53-42. Yes. So not a big difference. You think it probably came down to the wire there. So, I mean, this is probably going to be a more higher scoring game with combined points. So I'd really look to I think maybe a possible approach could be let them score. You know what I mean? Like, let's go back down and try to regroup on the offensive side of the ball and not try to get too confused and frustrated with this offense that looks like it's probably going to be pretty good with this dual threat. I maybe wouldn't try to pack the box so much, with the sacks. I'd like to maybe see them. Let's see if they could kind of run the ball, right? I'm not too worried about the receivers with Chase Smith and Nazai Boggs. Very good, on the corners there. I think Anthony Iannozzi has been playing some exceptional safety for the Colonials as well, who had 2 interceptions in a game a couple weeks ago, and now leads the team in picks with 3. So, let them air it out. Let the quarterback. I'd let this bum sit in the pocket as long as he wants, but as soon as he becomes mobile with that dual threat, that's where you kind of have to maybe not panic, but kind of question what he could do. Especially if he's still behind the line of scrimmage. But I think ideally, if the Colonials let the Trojans hand the ball off, I think that's where they're going to be at their best in terms of defense, trying to stop this powerhouse offense.
And I mean, just looking here at kind of their individual players, Max Preps just showed me some highlights from their game against William Tennant that they won, and I'm just seeing here 20, 30-yard passes.
Yeah,
where he will.
That could be dangerous.
It looks like Haiden Westcott is his name, and he'll kind of just sit in the back. He'll move side to side.
Yeah, they probably have a good offensive line,
and he'll launch that.
Yeah.
And I mean, they'll try to get as close to the end zone as possible because their running back, as a matter of fact, leads their team in total touchdowns. So they'll probably try to run that ball in.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a strategy that will get you high scores. Throwing that ball, getting it as far downfield as possible, letting your running back finish it out.
Right. I mean, so now that you're telling me about these long passes, Davin, a weakness that we've been able to identify kind of all season here is that teams will be able to get little, 7-9 yard passes off the Colonials, especially if they're like in a shorter field position for some first downs. I know William Tennant started to kind of find something at the end, but lost by, a huge margin to the Colonials a couple weeks ago. And, you're kind of like, well, everything else is so good that like, why is that really a problem for them? So I think an approach now for WISSAHICKON could be, work the receivers now or work the corners just a couple more steps, right? Try to get those underneath routes. And they may have to put, if they have do they have a receiver that's like has a reasonable amount of yards, like just a really good receiver? Because if they have one really good guy or even two really good guys, that's when you have to think about possibly putting this guy in double coverage.
Yeah.
Or is it like a tight end? Like, who's like, is it like a clear
so
go-to?
It looks like, rushing yards per game. It looks like
receiving yards.
Their wide receivers. I can't find any receiving yards, unfortunately, but it looks like for rushing yards per game.
Okay, so they might be able to just utilize this running back.
Their receiver is second and only by about 10 yards or so.
Okay,
and third is their quarterback. He can run.
Yeah, he's gonna run the ball.
Looking at these stats and especially, looking at these highlights,
right.
I'm looking at them thinking, if this team's going to pass, you want to send some coverage down there. And
yeah,
Coach Cheng is probably looking at this a lot better than I am.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that he could definitely find a way to eliminate their high scoring as a factor, and we could just get scoring. Because looking at their defensive stats, they do not look as pleasing as ours.
So that's kind of what I'm curious about.
Tackles per game is 1.8. That's their leader.
It's going to be interesting to see how they want to operate the Colonials, their defense and their offense. If they just kind of want to see, like, are we going to try to outscore them, or do we want to try to prevent them from scoring?
Yeah.
It's usually more a defensive strategy in football. I think that's how teams usually try to win games. But as we've seen in the past from the Colonials, like especially that Quakertown game, and even going back to that Upper Dublin game from last year, if you don't have an offense to come and get a few points back, you're just not out of it. No matter how good your defense is.
Tackles per game for Springfield, their running back, I guess, plays dual position. Kareem Lee leads in 1.8 tackles. Okay. Our leader's 5 tackles per game.
Per game on average,
I believe.
Yeah. And they have one more loss than we do, so that's.
And for sacks, 0. They have no
sacks of the season.
Everyone else has 0. So
wow.
It depends, because they're certainly going to try to run their defense differently than ours.
Right.
Every team's got their own sauce, special sauce.
Absolutely. So
it just depends how they're going to run it.
Right.
Their quarterback, Nolan Pounds, also his QB rating is 105.
Okay. He's their quarterback or their backup quarterback?
I'm not sure who he plays, because it looks like Aiden Westcott leads in receiving yards. Sorry, that was receiving yards.
Okay.
Sorry, I read that wrong.
Yeah, I thought you said quarterback.
Wide receivers, so 69.7 yards per game.
Okay.
Yeah, and the completion percentage is 0.65.
Okay.
So that's solid right there. Those are some good looking stats for them.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, both teams being such offensive powerhouses in these past few games, the game's going to be all about defense.
Right.
It's going to come down to, are there going to be any interceptions? Because from these long passes that Springfield's going to try to make, are there going to be any fumbles? How hard is each team going to hit to try to knock that ball out of someone's hands? It's going to be down to at least 1 or 2 factors in this game where the whole tides are going to turn.
Yeah.
And we don't know which team that's going to be. This is not like Colonials versus William Tennant, where we made bets on who's going to break 50, on when the Colonials are going to break 50. This game's going to be about who can get the points up on the board faster and who could stop the other team from doing so.
Yeah, I agree. So if you want to, check out that special sauce and see what each team's going to concoct on Friday, well, they're going to be playing in WISSAHICKON at WISSAHICKON. So kickoff will be at 7. In case you're not doing anything, I'd highly recommend go down and check out this primetime game between 2 top teams in our American League here. And this is probably for the championship. I'd say whoever wins that game probably gets the crown this year, and Colonials looking to three-peat. Now, kind of getting into some predictions, though, boys, I'd just like to kind of hear your thoughts on what we think the final score of this one's going to be. Davin, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll say let's go 42-35 Colonials.
42-35 Colonials, all right.
I respect that. I'm actually going to go 35-28 Colonials.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough. I can't really see any team having to kick a field goal there. I think I'd also like to take 42-35 in favor of the Colonials.
Just because you're kind of copying my work here, I'll say 45. Maybe the Colonials would
No,
want
there's
to
no way. There's just
when
no.
it comes down to the end.
I mean, maybe a 2-point conversion. But no, if you're
say,
already up by 7, you're not going to need a field goal, and you're not going to need a. This WISSAHICKON defense isn't ever going to force them to need a field goal. So unless you're going for 2, which I can't really see them doing, it's all touchdowns. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game on both sides of the ball. But I think the Colonials force an extra, an extra punt by WISSAHICKON, and that's how they get the one up on them. But I think it's going to be, whoever gets that kickoff first, coming down and scoring, then it goes back the other way, come down and score, whoever wins the toss, what have you, and then it's just how it is for the rest of the game until maybe something around the second half or the third quarter where the Colonials really seal the deal.
Yeah, this game is going to be back and forth. It's going to come down to the end. Any one of those teams, I think it's a toss-up matchup, and it's just going to be who wants it more, who's going to go out there, come out the gate hot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's kind of how high school football typically works, and Colonials have been doing a good job of keeping their momentum. Caden Lazinski looking to keep that perfect record. Tayshawn Johnson looking to, win this league and sack record. And, like I said, this is probably the game that gets them that, three-peat crown there. So lots to look forward to as we're going to kind of wrap up our show here. Hope you guys enjoyed. There's been a couple of Google forms to, fill out if you guys want to interact with the show a little more in the description. So I'd appreciate that. We'd appreciate that here if you filled that out. Make it a lot of fun. Hear what you guys want to hear more of and what you guys think. And we got some merch coming out soon, so please stay tuned for that. As always, I'm Haiden Haley. Got Reed Stern and Davin Haley with me helping me out today. So